conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
Mr. Nigel Farage.
Thank you, Donald, and good evening, everybody. You know, we talk a lot about whether our Prime Minister is a good Prime Minister, a bad Prime Minister, and we normally talk about it from a domestic perspective, and yet it's when our Prime Minister goes abroad to represent us on the world stage that perhaps I think we really, really care, regardless whether they come from a different political party to the one we voted for, because they are the representative of this nation and therefore of us. And there is no doubt in my mind that Tony Blair, as Prime Minister, looked impressive. I remember in July 2005, he walked into the European Parliament, deeply unpopular, because, of course, we'd gone to war in Iraq and the French and Germans hadn't. And I remember he was really unpopular. And he came in off the plane at Brussels, strode into the European Parliament like a gladiator about to do battle, and won everybody over. And David Cameron, whatever I may think of David Cameron's politics, the one thing that Call Me Dave had is when he walked down the steps of an aeroplane in a foreign country, he looked and sounded like a Prime Minister should. He was the governor. He was in charge. So the question I want to ask tonight is, are you proud of our Prime Minister when she's on the world stage? And I say that because, of course, Davos, and we talked about it last night, the World Economic Forum in Davos is on, and the global leaders are there. And let's have a listen to some of those global leaders, to some of the messages they're putting out. Let's start with the Donald.
We love your country. We think it's truly good. And we're working on transactions in terms of economic development, trade, maybe most importantly military. We are very much joined at the hip when it comes to the military.
Direct, clear. And by the way, folks, I'm not asking you to agree with these comments or not. I'm talking tonight about style. So there's the Donald, you know, and there's been all this speculation, hasn't there, about the fallout with Mrs May, difficulties. We love your country. We're joined at the hip. Boom, boom, boom. Good, clear, simple message. Let's try the Ugandan president.
America's got one of the best presidents ever.
That got him laughing.
Mr. Trump, I love Trump. I love Trump because he tells Africans, frankly.
So there you go, from Uganda, and despite what the Donald said about lots of African countries, and I won't use the word again, despite the derogatory term he used about many African countries, there's the Ugandan president. Good, strong, clear, simple message. I love Trump, because you know what? He tells it straight, whether we like it or not. What about Mrs Merkel?
We all very much regret the fact that the United Kingdom will not be a member of the European Union for long. Participation in the single market is contingent on the freedoms and freedom of movement as well.
There you go. We're whistling in the wind if we want a free trade deal, because we're going to have freedom of movement. Now, I hate that message. I don't like it, but it's good, strong, clear stuff. Folks, it's what's called leadership. You can be in no doubt about what Mrs Merkel is saying. And, of course, the new global leader who's got the stardust is, of course, Emmanuel Macron.
We will work together to have, at the end of this year, this common strategy for 10 years in order to provide visibility to our people and to the rest of the world about the fact that Europe is able to be this new power and basically to deal with some of those.
Now, again, you see, I loathe it. He wants the United States of Europe to be a global superpower in economic and military terms. I hate it. But who can doubt? Who can doubt that Macron gives political leadership? So we've gone from America through Uganda, Germany and France, and then, folks, yes, we get to slight cough, but here we go. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I'm being cruel. This is Mrs May, the British Prime Minister, speaking on the stage in Davos today.
Above all, we have to remember that the risks and challenges we face do not outweigh the opportunities. And in seeking to refresh the rules to meet the challenges of today, we must not miss out on the prize for tomorrow.
I need an interpreter.
For the forces of free trade and technological progress, which has brought us to this point, are as nothing in comparison to their potential to enrich the lives of our children and grandchildren. The United Kingdom has a proud history of stepping up, seizing the opportunities of our time and shaping the international rules and partnerships that can deliver progress for all. We stand ready to do so again. So together, let us renew our commitment to cooperation across governments, business, investors and society at large. And let us set ourselves on a path to deliver prosperity and growth for the benefit of all our people, now and for generations to come.
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. That was ghastly. And I need an interpreter. I have absolutely no idea what she was trying to say. I really don't get it. And if you think it's me being mean and cruel, because for the last 6 months I've said she's a hopeless Prime Minister, the worst I've seen in my lifetime, and many of you don't like me saying that. Let's just take the comments of Janet Daly. And she wrote in the Daily Telegraph after May's speech, she said it was a classic speech of the May genre in that it said nothing. Her peroration was so platitudinous as to be utterly meaningless. And if you look at the news wires from other countries around the world, they're all talking, of course they are, about Macron yesterday, Merkel today, Trump today. No one's talking about our Prime Minister. And if you see the photographs of her sitting there with Donald Trump, and you know, you should always be cautious, really criticising people for what they wear. But this sort of zip-up jerkin, it looked a bit like she put it on because she was taking a dog out for a walk and it was still cold in the morning. I mean, the whole thing, I think it was awful. I think she's an embarrassment on the world stage. Now, you've got your chance, as I say, to come and tell me that I'm being mean, I'm being nasty. Tell me you think she's a colossus on the world stage that completely outranks and outstrips the others. And you can do that by calling 0345 60 60 973. Tell me I misunderstood the clear messaging in that speech by texting to 84850, or perhaps you think I might just have it right, in which case on Twitter, using the hashtag Farage and LBC, at LBC, you can let me know what you think. And of course, you can watch me on Facebook. We're live here from London, and you can comment there too. Anthony is on the line from Staines. Anthony, what did you make of our leader's performance on the world stage today?
Well, the key word there is the world stage. She's on that world stage. And, of course, only a few weeks ago you were saying she wouldn't make it to Christmas.
I said there was a 50-50 chance she wouldn't make it for Christmas, and I think she's in pretty big trouble 3 weeks into the new year, Anthony.
I don't think so, because she's reaping the rewards of that very early visit to Trump. She was the only one who went over there. And I think that she has really shone a good light on Trump. Behind the scenes, these conversations that go on. She's not a flashy person, as I think I said to you before. Mm-hmm. She's not a Blair. She's not a Cameron. She hasn't got that sort of public school bravado. And maybe that's a good thing, because look where Cameron got us, to a cliff edge. And look where Blair got us, to the Iraq War. So forget all the presentational thing. I think what matters is the personality and that very dogged sense that she has of duty. And that, I think, is going to really serve us well.
I think, Anthony, I would agree with you. I would agree with you about her dogged sense of duty. And everyone that's ever worked with her says, you know, she has got an incredible work ethic and she sticks at things. But, Anthony, whether it's right or not, don't you think the image of our leader on the world stage actually matters?
Oh, it does, and I think that she is giving a very good image. She isn't a showman. She isn't a Trump, but it's yin and yang, it's chalk and cheese. It's what, she's complimenting Trump's glitter.
Well, Anthony, I was delighted to hear, Mnuchin, the financial secretary, say positive things about a trade deal. Very pleased to hear Trump talking about these close relationships we have in economic and military terms and being positive about a trade deal. Of course, the trouble is we can't do one for years and years and years because she wants to go for transition after the end of Article 50. But isn't it interesting that Macron, who politically is a long way from Trump. Trump has done a state visit to Paris on Bastille Day. Macron has been invited to get the full treatment in America. And we so far have done very little, Anthony.
Well, I think that's going to change. I think Trump may see change today.
OK. Anthony, I hope you're right. I really hope you're right. And if this understated, dogged persistence gets us to the right place so that we can sign a trade deal with America, I mean, many of us will be retired, I suspect, by the time it comes around. But if she's getting us to the right place with her style, I take the point. Grant is calling from Cardiff, a new caller to the show. Grant, thank you for calling in. Did you feel deeply proud of our Prime Minister today?
Sadly not, Nigel. And also, may I say good evening to you as well.
Good evening.
No, it's not just today. It's been sort of many events over since she became Prime Minister leading up to this day, where she's just shown no essence of being prime ministerial at all.
No, Grant, I have to say I rather agree with that. There's no strong, clear, distinct message. There's an attempt to please both sides of the argument at all times. And Grant, am I being cruel when I say that actually your image, how you carry yourself on the world stage, does actually matter?
I mean, the idealist inside me likes to think that politicians shouldn't be judged on their image, and they really should be judged on the substance of their arguments and what they put into practice. But the realist inside me understands that there is an image needed if you're going to go travel around the globe, representing a country, representing people. I mean, you have to look and talk the part as well as back up what your ideas are. Well,
of course, both are important. And Grant, she'll be off to Brussels, of course, for phase 2 of the negotiations. Do you want her to stay on through the rest of Brexit?
No.
OK. Grant, thank you for your call. And Louise says to me by text, Nigel, May's speech is upbeat and optimistic. Please get off her case. No, Louise, it was gobbledygook, in my opinion. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC, and it's 7:15. I praised Theresa May to the rafters in January of last year following her Lancaster House speech. I thought, hooray! Somebody is out there saying the things I've been campaigning on for 20 years, and she really wants to deliver what the Brexit voters wanted. I have, since June of last year, been on her case on this show saying she's a dud. A lot of you think I'm mean, I'm cruel, I've got it wrong, but I think she's a dud, and I think her performance at Davos today confirms that on the world stage too. Meanwhile, at home, while she's away, things are not going great guns for her. Harry Cole and my son last night broke the story that Sir Graham Brady, chairman of the 1922 committee, is kind of begging MPs, please don't give me any more letters calling for a leadership election. 48 letters are needed to trigger a leadership contest in the Tory party. Speculation in Westminster is that number is now in the 40s. And an article that appeared in today's Times by Ian Martin under the headline, Will Someone Rid Us of This Appalling PM? What I'm saying to you folks is my view on this is now being shared by a lot more people. She's not up to the job, in my view. And I do think the image actually matters on the world stage. And some of you hate that. Tina in Romford says, being Prime Minister is not a stage play. Grow up. All right, Tina, I'm sorry if you're offended. But it does actually matter how you carry yourself. Trump walked in like a rock star. And suddenly everyone's fawning and gathering around, and she shuffles in at the back and they wonder who she is. That is my view. Victoria is a new caller from Stansted. Victoria, good evening.
Good evening, Nigel. I'm just shocked by what you're saying. You're it's your perception of image. Donald Trump globally has a terrible image, but you personally...
Well, it looked pretty good today, Victoria.
But that's your perception as well.
Okay.
A lot of people find him revolting. Theresa may not have the clout that you personally find more important. You want to see strength, but she's more decent. And I don't know where you get this superiority complex. Her party is more successful than yours was.
Well, that's hardly surprising, Victoria. They had a two...
Yours is close to collapse.
Victoria, that is irrelevant. We are talking here about the Prime Minister of this country. We're talking about whether she's representing us well on the world stage. And I do accept, Victoria, that my comments about her image are utterly subjective. All right? I do accept that's utterly subjective, and you and I can look at this differently, and fine. But what I do put to you is, if you listen to those clips that I played earlier of the message Trump was putting out, the message Macron was putting out, the message Merkel was putting out, the audience was left in no doubt as to what they thought should happen.
But at what cost to your principles, and how do you represent your country? And Trump has no credibility. If he was, in your eyes and the other man's eyes, impressive and walks in with gravitas, there are so many of us out there.
But you're now back to style. You're now back to style. And I agree with you, Victoria, that we could both disagree on the style of May, and we can say the same for Trump. But what I'm saying, Victoria, is all those global leaders at Davos are delivering a clear message. What I'm saying to you is Mrs. May, in her speech today, was virtually indecipherable.
And I totally see where you're coming from, but who would you propose at this moment in time, other than your good self, would do a better job?
Well, it won't be me, and I'm not putting myself forward for it either.
No, it won't be you. We all know that.
Somebody with conviction, Victoria. Somebody who actually believes in something. Anything.
Collectively, as a nation, we're going through a very murky time, and she is, I think, to the best of her ability, trying to be as straight and as uncomplicated as she can. But she's representing a confused nation, and that just comes across if she sounds slightly bumbling. Well, her party need to give her clarity. I think she just depicts where we're at, and Trump may be more...
But Victoria, what does she believe in? What does she believe in?
Well, I think I know what she believes in. I don't. I think she believes in decent moral values, and I think she's trying to navigate us clearly, and I don't... No, she doesn't have the style of the orator. You know, she's not an orator like you are. You have talents and strengths that she doesn't. But the fact remains that she is where she is, and I think she's...
Victoria, do you think I'm being too harsh on her?
No, I don't think you're being too harsh on her, and I respect the fact that you were there, and I imagine if I had been there, that I would have found her lacking compared to some of the other leaders, like you did. However, Trump is a disgrace, and 2018 is a year where we are not going to tolerate the treatment of women that I mean, the thing is, somebody like you, in being so keen on him so publicly, you show that you don't feel that strongly about his disregard of women.
Well, Victoria, we have some very, very ill-advised, boastful, laddish, horrid comments that he made. But, you know, you could look across the other side of the spectrum to Bill Clinton. There are lots of people with faults out there. Victoria, I presume you're not looking forward to Trump's visit later this year.
Sorry, say that again?
So I presume you're not looking forward to Trump's visit later this year.
The jury's out for me, because if he came and nobody turned up, I think that would send a good message. I think he should definitely come.
Good.
The President of the United States of America must come. Do I want it to be a state visit with all the solid gold? No, I don't think it's appropriate. You cannot have the comments that he has made broadcast globally and be treated that way. It's 2018, and the tides have got to change. Equality is where we're going, and that is more important, or...
Well, I think times are changing, Victoria. I understand that.
You are motivated by economics, and you are motivated by the strength of sovereignty. But so many of us are motivated by mental health issues and equality for women and equality across races and genders and creeds, and that is not something somebody...
We could have both, couldn't we?
Stands for. However, Theresa May does support those things, so whereas you might find her bumbling and lacking, she does stand for better things that are more important to some people in 2018 than people like Trump.
Well, that may be true. Whether she's a Conservative is a separate question. Victoria, you've had your say. I thank you for your comments. Andrew agrees. He thinks I'm jealous of Theresa May. David says, Theresa May opens her mouth and nothing of use to the UK comes out. Maz says, Moggy is our true leader. That was last night, Maz. You've missed it. Reese is calling from Lambeth. Good evening, Reese. Am I being too harsh, Reese, on the Prime Minister?
No, you're not being too harsh. You're entitled to your freedom of speech on whatever your opinion on Theresa May is. But the question, I think, was about, is she a leader? Does she have that charisma? Do you know what? Probably doesn't have as much charisma as other leaders. But do you know what? For all some of her faults and stuff, I respect her because unlike your Corbyns, your Camerons, your Sturgeons, and your George Osbornes, they want to be the media's best friend. They want every celebrity to like them. You see Corbyn, trying to get all the praise from people like Stormzy. Probably doesn't even listen to Stormzy's music.
and appearing at Glastonbury and all the rest of it.
Exactly. They think, oh, the celebrities must like me. At least Theresa May, right, thinks, you know what, stuff what the bloody media thinks, stuff what celebrities think. I'm here to do a job. And you know what? I respect her for that. She's not the most charismatic leader in the country.
No.
But you know what? Because she's professional, because she's not sort of, I've got to be everyone's friend, I respect her for that more so than Cameron. And last week at a conference of a party that I'm a member of, not Labour, not Conservative, not UKIP, not Lib Dem, none of them, my friend was like, Theresa May's got no charisma. I was like, do you know what, mate? I respect her more so than I respect Cameron because of the reasons I just mentioned. We don't need no person to be,
Reese, you make the point, and others have, that, we don't necessarily need a leader to be a flashy celeb type, and I get that. I mean, I personally like people that are kind of out there and strong, but that's about style. Reese, in terms of substance, what I'm arguing tonight, having played those clips at the top of the hour, is the other global leaders from America, Europe and Africa say things that we can understand. Whether we agree with them is irrelevant. They say things we can understand. My point, Reese, is that May seems to speak in a kind of language. It's obviously all been put together, by some speechwriter. And frankly, Reese, we don't get any clarity of message.
And you know what, Nigel? I agree with you on that because I was at work and it was on in the background and I was trying to hear it a bit. And I was thinking, what's she really on about?
Well, here we are.
You got other leaders, like, for example, you got Macron, who, at least he's saying stuff you understand. You got Merkel, that Europhile, saying things that you understand. But Theresa May, I guess she was being a bit mealy-mouthy, except,
a bit.
You know what? At least she's not like all the other dumb politicians that want everyone's got to like me.
Reese, okay, I get your point. She doesn't want to be a super celeb. She's never ever going to have 37.6 million followers on Twitter like McDonald. But Reese, you and I totally agree the message wasn't there. And Richard from Chelsea thinks whoever wrote Theresa May's speech should seek an alternative career, like from a dungeon in the Tower of London. That's a little bit harsh. You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 7:30. May's in Davos. And I'm asking, are you proud of our Prime Minister on the world stage? I'm not, and I'm criticising her for her style and for the lack of substance of her speech too. But it's also worth remembering that she was the longest-serving Home Secretary for 150 years, immediately before she became Prime Minister. And the Tory party has always prided itself on being the party of law and order. One of the big things for the Tory party, one of the reasons they thought people would go out and vote for them. Well, I would suggest on these markers, the Prime Minister is perhaps not doing so well either, as figures today show police forces in England and Wales logged an increase in crimes up by 14% in the year up to September 2017. A 14% increase in crime, and that includes, amongst other things, a 30% increase in robbery. 30% increase in robbery. So I think A Tory party that traditionally was the party of law and order, the party of defence, has quite a few problems, and I'm not sure it's got a leader that can drag them out of it. I like this one. Nigel, I like you, but I like TM too. She plays it cool. Trump's a bully, Merkel's a has-been, and Macron leads a country on strike. Anthony in Greenwich, all of that may be true. Can you please send me another text and tell me what Mrs. May said today, because I can't interpret it. The last time I was proud of a PM on the world stage was Margaret Thatcher, I get from one. It's like watching a dad dance at a party. Shameful, says another. May uses non-speak, says D in Kent. Quite a lot of you agreeing with me that actually, she really, yeah, maybe I'm being unfair about the zip-up jerkin she wore. Maybe that's unfair. And I get it. Not everybody is a brash extrovert, but there's no substance either. That's my view. Catherine, a new caller to this show from Dorking. Do you agree with me, or have I got it completely wrong?
Nigel, most times I hear you on the radio and I'm giving you a silent applause in my head. That's how I feel about you. I'm like, yeah, go, Nigel, go. I didn't vote for you, but I like you. You are utterly wrong about Theresa May.
Okay.
Do not discuss what she's wearing. You didn't sit there and say Macron was wearing a dodgy suit and different ties and everything else. So don't talk about a woman and what she's wearing.
Oh, I've often talked about Jeremy Corbyn not being able to do his tie-up, Catherine. Hang on, I've done that regularly. I've never criticised Mrs. May's appearance before today. I thought the way she turned out today to meet the American president, to me, Catherine, didn't look appropriate.
Okay, appropriate or not appropriate, you rip off those clothes and there is a tiger beneath that outfit. And do you know what? She doesn't need to be loud. She doesn't need to be brash, because do you know what? Don't judge me on what I say, judge me on what I do. A woman literally, a woman bleeds for a week and doesn't die. A woman gives birth to live young. She is fierce. She is just incredibly dignified. She is strong, but she doesn't need to be out there. And to compare her with Merkel, whose country is just, it's ridiculous. You can't even put them in the same bracket. Nobody sits there and goes, oh my God, the state of Merkel. Nobody respects Merkel anymore. She's lost her...
Well, Catherine, she's got difficulties. That's true, because, of course, Mrs. Merkel has the same political views as Mrs. May. She believes in the European Union. Mrs. May, of course, backed the Remain side in the referendum and by some strange fate has become Prime Minister. But, Catherine, can you tell me what was the message she was delivering at Davos today?
I agree with you. It was very British politics. That's what they all do, Nigel. You are actually probably the only one that actually comes out and gives a clear steering when you are delivering a speech. So I think that's indicative of British politics. It's like, let's waffle. But do you know what? Do you know what the biggest thing about her speech is, Nigel? If you speak to any professional, presentation expert, they will tell you the tone and the calmness in her voice is what makes her great. She doesn't need to, if you just hear the breaths between her speech, that is clear, calm. I will not be ruffled.
But Catherine, I'm going to take issue with you here, because it seems to me, whatever your speaking style, and certainly being calm and clear and audible, these things are very important. But surely you have to say something that people can actually remember.
But look at some of these, look at some of these speeches over history. If you look back in, not just in British politics, but speeches of hope, and, that is what this country is about, and that is what she's trying to deliver. To put Trump up there and believe that he is a powerhouse, no way. She's on a very difficult place. She's got a very difficult journey. But there is nobody else in British politics who's as straight and as honest as she is.
Well, Catherine, you've put the case for her very passionately, but when I hear sentences like, we have to remember the risks and challenges we face do not outweigh the opportunities. I mean, hang on, please, I do understand you're trying to give a balanced performance, but Catherine, you have to, and all the great political leaders over centuries, perhaps longer than that, they have a phrase associated with them, a series of words that they're remembered for in history. And I don't think that this woman, sincere though she is, I'm sure, and honest and decent that she is in many ways. And I think it's very interesting. Do you know, Catherine, when she was here with Ian Dale, a couple of months back, and Ian asked her, how would you vote if there was a referendum today? Now, politically, the honest answer was, I'd vote to leave. But I don't think the vicar's daughter from Buckinghamshire is capable of lying. She's very honest, she's very straight, and Catherine, I agree with you. I think she's a very decent human being. And a previous caller said she cares about things. But actually what I'm talking about here is leadership. And I don't think being a nice person is necessarily the key.
But it's not even, I don't think do you know what she wants to say? She wants to tell the Germans, you know what, you stop us trading with you, sunshine, we'll stop buying your cars, we'll stop buying your technology, we'll stop buying everything, because do you know what, that's what she wants to say.
Why doesn't she say it, Catherine?
She should say that, but do you know what, Nigel, she is a world leader. She can't, you and I both know, because I tell you, I listen to you, and I'm screaming at the radio going, just tell them we'll stop buying their cars. I'm sat here now in my German Audi. My house is powered by German products. You don't want to trade with us. Do you know what? I'll stop buying.
You're right. And Catherine, when's the last time that you ran for Parliament?
Oh my God! Don't even get me started, because I tell you now, I would.
Well, it's about time you did, is all I can say, because you're one of the most passionate callers I've had on this show. I've been doing it for over a year, and you kind of believe in stuff, and you're not afraid to say it. I think you're a star. You're the best. You're the best caller I've had for a very, very long time. Your first time caller of the show, and please, please, make me one promise: you'll call me again.
I will. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Wow. I mean, there we are. Isn't it interesting? Catherine there, with so much passion and belief, it was unbelievable, defending Mrs. May, who doesn't have any of those qualities. And it's interesting, a lot of you, I think, a lot of you who disagree with me strongly tonight, disagree because you like Mrs. May as a good Christian human being. But it's not that merit that I'm talking about tonight. I'm talking about a leader. And whether we like a leader or not, I don't think matters. It's, are they actually a leader? Sue is calling from Cheam, and another new caller. Sue, good evening.
Hello, Nigel. Nigel, please stop encouraging the terminally bewildered. That previous caller, you're saying that she should call you again and give as much passion about something that she was talking a load of rubbish.
Well, at the end, Sue, she was great, wasn't she? Because she was saying what she wants Theresa May to say is, come on, Mrs. Merkel, be sensible or we'll stop buying your cars. But Mrs. May would never do that, would she?
Well, no. Well, she might say that, but you can't believe a word that comes out of that woman's mouth. I feel like I'm living in a parallel universe. When Mrs. May was first elected, she stood on the steps of Downing Street and she promised to take care of the disabled so that they wouldn't have to keep going through terrible assessments.
Yep.
And as they've been, disabled for many years. And then she said about the just about managing. Well, so many disabled people have actually killed themselves on her watch. She should hang her head in shame. And as for the just about managing, they've probably gone completely under by now.
And Sue, what about her on the world stage? I mean, does she? I mean, you heard the clips I played earlier on in this show, I'm sure. I mean, am I right in saying that she's not giving a clear message about Brexit and Britain's place in the world?
Nigel, it's all waffle, and it must be so disheartening for people who've got to deal with her, who actually have, from other countries, who actually have an intelligent argument to make when they hear waffle coming out of her mouth. Because I don't know what she's thinking of. I don't know even if she's thinking at all. But she hasn't got the gravitas to be PM.
No.
And the sooner she goes, the better.
Sue, on that note, I can only say that what you've just done is what Mrs. May did not do in Davos today. You have delivered a good, simple, straightforward message. Whether people like it or not isn't really the question that I'm debating tonight. Now, Anthony from Greenwich, who I asked to interpret Mrs. May's speech, is texting me back as we speak, but for now, you're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusive at LBC, and it's 7:45. I don't think Theresa May represents us well on the world stage, either in terms of style or in terms of substance. And many of you think I'm being a bit cruel when it comes to style, but most of you agree with me when it comes to substance. There really wasn't much there today compared to the other global leaders. And Anthony in Greenwich thought I was being a bit cruel, and I asked him to text back to interpret the speech, and he's done so. He said, "You asked me what her speech was about. God only knows." But it's got us talking, hasn't it? Well, it has tonight, I suppose. I think it was a non-speech, to play it safe, a diplomatic speech. Anthony, I'm sure you're right. But, you know, how can you succeed? How can you succeed? How can you establish your brand on the world stage without a message? But hey, the whole point of LBC is people can come on of all differing opinions. And the other week, Alistair Campbell came on to my Sunday morning show at 10 a.m, and Alistair and I have done pitch battle before on various media platforms and public debates because we have very diametrically opposed views, and yet we had a really good knockabout debate. We took calls, and Alistair Campbell loved it so much and enjoyed the LBC format so much that at 10 o'clock this Saturday morning, Matt Fry's away, and from 10 till 12 this Saturday, Alistair Campbell will be hosting the show. Now, Alistair is far more obsessive about Brexit than I am. He wants to stop it. So you can bet your bottom dollar it's going to be Brexit morning on Saturday, and you can ring him and challenge him, and it should be fun. My next caller, who's going to comment on the British Prime Minister, is calling all the way from Phoenix, Arizona. It's Michael. We've not spoken before on this show. You're very welcome.
Thank you so much, Mr. Farage. And let me say, I do appreciate you getting back to the email that I sent out last week regarding American-Anglo relations.
Yes, no, I saw it, absolutely. So, Michael, what was your, as an American, you know, you've seen these global leaders, you've seen the Trumps and the Macrons, the Merkels and everybody else. You know, I mean, some callers think that I'm being a bit unfair and a bit unkind to the British Prime Minister. What is your view?
Well, let me start off by saying that the Marxist fire.
I tell you what, Michael, you phoned from a long distance, but the line is lousy, but we're going to try and get you back. I'll go to Ray from Aberdeen, another new caller. Ray, good evening.
Good evening.
So, Ray, were you massively impressed and proud to be British today?
Not with her. It's like I try to like her, but she's not very good, and I don't trust her either.
Go on.
Yeah, well, this deals, she's making a transition period and stuff like that. What are they doing? They want to leave.
Yeah, do you know, you sound a bit like a Jacob Rees-Mogg supporter.
Yes, and you.
Yeah, well, yeah, no, I mean, but thank you. But, you know, Jacob made the point very clearly in that committee, that Commons Brexit committee yesterday to David Davis, the Brexit secretary. He was out doing the media rounds again today. And Ray, I have to say, you know, to sign us up for a transition deal that she says is about 2 years means, you know, when Trump and people are saying, hey, we want to do a trade deal, the answer is we can't do it for years. It's pretty poor, Ray, isn't it? We
can't do a trade deal during that 2 years period. Yeah. We can't do it.
I know. So, Ray, do you think the party ought to replace her?
Yeah, absolutely. They've got to. But the thing is, what Jacob Rees-Mogg was saying, that nobody's ever got to the Prime Minister without going through the Cabinet first. I think if he's going to do it, he's just going to have to be the first to do that.
Well, do you know what?
Straight from the back benches.
Do you know what, Ray? If you think about the rules and how things happen, Brexit would never have happened, Trump would never have happened, Leicester City would certainly never, ever have happened. We're living in a world of great change. Ray, anything's possible. I thank you for your call. We're back to Phoenix. Michael, I hope the line's improved.
Yeah, I'm fine. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, I can. Far away.
Perfect. So back to what I was saying, essentially, was that my biggest concern is that we essentially right now are living in a world where the postmodernists and neo-Marxists really do have a foothold on much of the global politics. That being said, I think that Theresa May had an opportunity to be a bulwark and defense against this. I think that she has failed you guys by selling you up the river in many different instances, and I think that the British people deserve better. As an ally, as an American who sees what's happening across the pond, it pains me to see what the UK is going through, and I believe you deserve better.
Michael, I thank you for that comment. I'm very pro-American, as you know. I've spent most of my business life working for Americans, and I spent a fair bit of time in the States over the course of the last couple of years. And, when Mnuchin and Trump on the same day talk about closer relations on trade, they are being sincere, Michael, aren't they?
Yes, absolutely. The United States, on our side of the pond, we very much value this relationship. But as something that I was explaining in my email going back and forth with you was, I am afraid of eventually an anti-British sentiment if the influence of the elites gets to the masses of the people. Now, I am very much aware that I think it was something around just the number of British who did vote for Brexit. I understand that there is vision. I understand that there is a want for change. And that is something that that's what I hold to as an ally. I hold faith in British people for the want for change.
Well, Michael, my view very strongly is that amongst the people, that desire for change is still there. And part of that is for us to be freer, to associate with our other friends and allies around the world, like the USA. And I think we're being frustrated from getting there by people like our Prime Minister. Michael, I thank you very much indeed for your call. It's dribble, it's waffle. Stop listening after 5 minutes, says Lisa on Twitter. I'm actually told that there were newsrooms in London, newsrooms who live and breathe off current affairs, that struggled to listen to the end of the speech. So vacuous was it. Philip from Esher is calling you, another new caller to the show. Good evening, Philip.
Hi, Nigel.
So come on, tell me, did she make you feel proud to be British today?
Oh, for goodness sake. She didn't say anything. She's so pusillanimous. She's completely and utterly useless. I was actually watching her speech, which was being transmitted by one of the financial television stations, and it was so boring they switched to another room where a few people were talking. Because it was so boring. And shall I tell you something? The day she was elected to be the Prime Minister, I wrote to my MP and I said, you just lost the next general election.
Yeah. Well, do you know what, Philip? However poorly she did today, Hammond, our Chancellor, told Davos that with Brexit, virtually nothing was going to change at all. So they've really got problems, Philip, and if they're not true and they're not sincere to that Brexit vote, they will lose that next general election and lose it very, very badly. Philip, I thank you. I'm going to squeeze in one last caller. Peter is calling from Cardigan, another new caller of the show, my last caller this evening. Good evening, Peter.
Oh, good evening, Nigel.
Give me your analysis of our Prime Minister, please.
I think she's a nice person. I think she means well. She should ditch her speechwriters, though. I'd think a lot more of it if I could believe that what she's saying is what she means.
Yeah. But Peter, if she was a woman of passion, would she even need a speechwriter?
Well, that's the point, isn't it, really? A woman of passion wouldn't need a speechwriter. And so she started off pretty well with that Mansion House speech. Was it Mansion House?
Well, it was actually Lancaster House. Was the that was the really big speech where she set out the terms that Brexit would be conducted upon. And Peter, I heard words and phrases that I'd been using for 20 years, and I was in this studio on that night, and I was cheering her. I was thinking, wow, she's really going to do it. And for me, it's been downhill ever since then.
Yeah, I couldn't really think of a salient point of any speech she's made since.
No, well, I'm not sure that I can either. And one of the whole points of politics and leadership, Peter, is whether people like what you're saying or not, you've got to say something memorable, haven't you?
That's right. It's got to be clear, got to be simple, to the point. And if it means upsetting somebody else in the world, well, Donald Trump has done a few things in his short time in office by doing that.
He seems to relish upsetting people, doesn't he?
Well, people need it from time to time when things get stale, don't they?
Yeah, no, Peter, I agree with you, and I thank you very much for your call. Well, loads and loads, once again, of new callers to the show tonight, and that's great. John says on Facebook, May wants to stay in power as long as possible to get in the history books. Well, John, getting in the history books for the right reasons might be a better thing than for the wrong reasons. And Shaz says, a leadership challenge is looming. I notice a lot of self-promotion going on at the moment. Surely you're not talking about Boris, are you? I can't imagine that. You've been listening to the Nigel Farage Show here on LBC. I'm back on Sunday morning at 10 a.m. Coming up tonight at 10 o'clock, it's Majid Nawaz, who's in for Ian Collins. But up next, it's Clive Bull.
Nigel, thank you.